Have you ever felt like life is just one long, frustrating chase for things you can never quite catch? That happiness is always just around the corner, but you never seem to turn it? Well, there was a philosopher who not only felt the same way but built his entire worldview around it. He's been called the darkest, most pessimistic thinker in history, a man who believed our very existence is a mistake. But what if I told you that this philosopher of doom and gloom also held the secret to transcending all that suffering? His name was Arthur Schopenhauer. Born in 1788 into a wealthy merchant family, he could have had a life of luxury, but he chose a different path. From a young age, Schopenhauer was acutely aware of the misery around him. He saw suffering not as an occasional bug in the system, but as a fundamental feature of life itself. This observation became the bedrock of his entire philosophy. He traveled, studied, and devoured the works of thinkers like Plato and Kant, but he also did something radical for his time. He looked east to the ancient wisdom of Hinduism and Buddhism, finding echoes of his own thoughts in their teachings. He was one of the first Western philosophers to truly bridge the gap between Eastern and Western thought, creating a unique and powerful synthesis. He spent years pouring his ideas into his magnum opus, a book with a title as imposing as its content, The World as Will and Representation. For most of his life, nobody really cared. The book collected dust, and Schopenhauer lived in relative obscurity, a grumpy intellectual with a poodle named Atma, the Hindu term for the universal self. He was overshadowed by his contemporary, Hegel, whose optimistic, rational philosophy was all the rage in Germany. Schopenhauer despised Hegel, calling him a dull-witted charlatan. He even scheduled his lectures at the same time as Hegel's, hoping to steal his students. It backfired spectacularly. While Hegel's lecture hall was packed, Schopenhauer's was often empty. But as we'll see, Schopenhauer would have the last laugh. So, what exactly is this groundbreaking, life-changing, and profoundly depressing philosophy? Let's break it down. It starts with a simple yet mind-bending idea. The world is my representation. What does he mean by that? Imagine you're looking at a tree. You see its green leaves, its rough bark. You feel the breeze rustling through its branches. But according to Schopenhauer, you are not experiencing the tree as it is. You are experiencing your brain's interpretation of the tree. The colors, the textures, the sounds, they are all processed and constructed inside your own mind. The entire world you perceive, from the stars in the sky to the screen you're watching right now, is a mental picture, a representation. It exists for you, through you. This is a concept he borrowed heavily from Immanuel Kant, but Schopenhauer gave it a terrifying twist. He asked, if everything we know is just a representation in our minds, what is the thing in itself? What is the true, underlying reality behind this grand illusion? Kant said we could never know. Schopenhauer said, oh yes, we can. He argued that we have one special window into this ultimate reality, our own bodies. We don't just observe our bodies as objects in the world. We experience them from the inside. We feel our urges, our desires, our hunger, our thirst, our relentless drive to act. This inner force, this seething, striving energy, is what Schopenhauer called the will. And here's the crucial part. Schopenhauer believed this will is not just inside us. It is everything. It's a single, blind, unconscious, and universal force that underlies all of reality. It's the force that makes the planets orbit the sun, the force that makes a plant grow towards the light, and the force that makes a lion hunt a gazelle. He called it the will to live. This will has no goal, no purpose, no grand design. It's just a restless, endless, insatiable striving for existence. It just wants. It wants to live. It wants to continue, and it doesn't care about anything else. We, and every other thing in the universe, are just individual manifestations of this one monstrous cosmic will. Now you might be starting to see why they call him a pessimist. If we are all driven by this blind, insatiable will, what does that mean for our happiness? Well, for Schopenhauer, it means we're doomed from the start. Life, he says, swings like a pendulum, back and forth, between pain and boredom. Think about it. When you desire something, you're in a state of pain or lack. You want a new phone, a promotion, the affection of someone. This wanting is a form of suffering. And what happens when you finally get it? You might feel a fleeting moment of satisfaction, but it doesn't last. The desire is gone, and you're left with an empty feeling, boredom, and it's not long before a new desire pops up to take its place, and the cycle of suffering begins all over again. The will is never truly satisfied. It's a bottomless pit. Therefore, a life governed by the will is a life defined by suffering. He famously wrote that if you were to lead the most optimistic person through the hospitals, prisons, and torture chambers of the world, they would eventually understand what life is truly about. Okay, so life is suffering, happiness is an illusion, and we're all just puppets of a blind cosmic force. Feeling good yet? This is usually the point where people either close the book on Schopenhauer or get really interested. Because after painting this incredibly bleak picture of existence, he offers us a way out. Not a way to be happy in the traditional sense, but a way to escape the tyranny of the will and find a state of peace. He proposed two paths of salvation. The first is through aesthetic contemplation. When you listen to a beautiful piece of music, get lost in a magnificent painting, or become absorbed in a powerful drama, something amazing happens. For a brief moment, you forget yourself. You forget your wants, your fears, your desires. You are no longer an individual, striving and suffering under the command of the will. Instead, you become a pure, will-less subject of knowledge. You are simply observing, contemplating the eternal forms and ideas behind the world of representation. In that moment of aesthetic bliss, you are temporarily free. This is why Schopenhauer placed such a high value on the arts, especially music, which he considered the highest art form because it speaks the language of the will itself, expressing its joys and sorrows directly, without the need for images or concepts. But this escape is temporary. The music ends, you leave the museum, and you're right back in the clutches of the will. For a more permanent solution, Schopenhauer proposed a second, more difficult path: asceticism, or the denial of the will. This is where his debt to Eastern philosophy becomes crystal clear. He advocated for a life of voluntary poverty, chastity, and self-denial. By consciously rejecting the will's demands, the desire for possessions, for pleasure, for procreation, one could gradually starve the will within oneself. This leads to a state of resignation and tranquility, a quietude that is the closest thing to happiness we can achieve. It's not about destroying life, but about overcoming the blind urge to live. It's the ultimate act of rebellion against our cosmic dictator. For most of his life, Schopenhauer was ignored. But in his final years, things started to change. A collection of his essays, written in a more accessible style, finally brought him the fame that had eluded him for so long. And after his death, his influence exploded. Friedrich Nietzsche, though he would later break from Schopenhauer, was first awakened to philosophy by reading The World as Will and Representation. He took Schopenhauer's concept of the will and transformed it into his own: will to power. Sigmund Freud's concept of the unconscious, id, a seething cauldron of primitive drives, is almost a direct echo of Schopenhauer's will. The writer Leo Tolstoy, the composer Richard Wagner, and the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein were all profoundly shaped by his thought. Schopenhauer's philosophy is not a cheerful one, it's a bitter medicine. But it forces us to confront the most difficult questions about our existence. It validates the feeling that there is something fundamentally tragic about life, but it doesn't leave us in despair. It offers a path, not to easy happiness, but to a profound sense of peace found in art, in contemplation, and in a compassionate understanding of the shared struggle of all living things. He was the dark prophet who saw the abyss at the heart of existence, but also saw the light of salvation shining from within. What do you think? Is life a pointless cycle of suffering driven by a blind will? Or is there more to it than that? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you found this dive into the dark side of philosophy interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the ideas that shape our world. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.